Well, good afternoon. This is Houndog Steve wishing you a very pleasant afternoon. And thank you for joining me here on this kind of dull, rainy, grey fall day. So, of course, I'm sitting behind the computer reading a few stories. And I came across this article, thought piece by Jim Quinn from the Burning Platform. And he talks about some of the things that are being used today against the public that were basically written as warnings in the book 1984. Now, when I was a schoolboy in middle school or secondary school, 1984 and Brave New World, 1984 by George Orwell and Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, were pretty much standard reading, and they were both two sides of the same coin. They're both a kind of control system, but the 1984 is a far more authoritarian type of control system. So it's kind of like the Brave New World is the carrot and 1984 is the stick. But, you know, reading the article, it just made me realize how far we have come down the censorship path since probably big time since around about 2010, and this is when the big tech platforms really started to lay on people hard for having a differing point of view, and that has only become more focused with all of these large platforms who seem to think that they can be a platform and a publisher at the same time, and censor whatever it is that you say. And I just had experience of this just recently. A video was taken down purely and simply because they took some of the images out of their context, even though I showed them a video that showed exactly the same pictures as an example. So now we have reached a point in the UK where if you make a Facebook comment about the protest, the recent protests that were taking place all over the country, you could find yourself in court and consequently in jail. I mean, there are people jailed for up to 18 months for a Facebook comment, whilst they were, the prisons are all overcrowded, and they were actually releasing hardened criminals to make space for the thought crimes being committed on Facebook. And, you know, the absolute foundation of any society, any civil society, is free speech. And yes, of course, someone's free speech might be offensive to another person, but, you know, I always say that if that's true for one, then it must be exactly true for the other, because, you know, they're both on opposite sides of the fence. But with all of this censorship, we are not getting a full picture. You know, our searches are being filtered by these large tech companies all the time. And the most recent example is the Donald Trump interview with Joe Rogan. Whether you like the guy or not is immaterial. He was censored. He was shadow banned. It was hard to search for that interview. And yet it's still, I checked today, it got 37 million views on YouTube, and I have no idea how many views it got on the podcast itself, Spotify that Joe Rogan is with. But, you know, this is cheating. You know, everyone should have the right to see this man speak and hear what he's got to say, whether you like him or not. Okay? When you run for president, and I don't care who it is, but if you're in America, you are vetted. You are vetted by the FBI, the CIA, you know, to make sure that you are absolutely clean. So forget this media front drop. All of these people have been vetted so that they know exactly who they're dealing with. But like I say, now of course maybe I should point out here that I am what they call a political atheist. I neither support one or the other. I'm really a bit of a centrist. I prefer cooperation, dialogue, that kind of stuff. And yeah, I'm an observer of the political situation. So, you know, if Kamala Harris had sat down with Joe Rogan, she may well do. I believe she's been invited again. She turned down the first invite, but I will sit 3 hours and watch her interview, because I'd like to get to know these people and how they come across. You know, this was, you know, the Joe Rogan thing, it was like a sit down with friends. It was a very low-key, relaxed kind of conversation, and I've read this before, and I also believe that if we're going to have, you know, this kind of politics, and it seems like we're going to, into the foreseeable future, this is the way it's going to be, those candidates should be able to sit down for those kind of candid interviews where everyone can take a good look at the person and try and gauge the kind of personality. So anyway, let's just flip over to this article and we'll come back and I'll do a quick wrap up. Okie dokie, here we go. Okay, so this from The Burning Platform, authored by Jim Quinn. Time to overwhelm them with thought crimes. And this is a quote from George Orwell's 1984. Thought crime was not a thing that could be concealed forever. You might dodge it successfully for a while, even for years, but sooner or later they were bound to get you. And another quote, they do not even need evidence to condemn somebody they believe is guilty. Wow. Many people have joked that Orwell's 1984 wasn't supposed to be an instruction manual, but now it's not a joke. Orwell's cautionary warning about authoritarianism, mass surveillance and the suppression of free speech through the use of propaganda, censorship and threat of imprisonment and torture has come to fruition, especially since the party's rollout of the CV pandemic in 2020. Despite virtually every student being required to read 1984 at some point in their schooling, none of Orwell's strident warnings seem to have been grasped. Therefore, the ruling oligarchy has used virtually every totalitarian tool in the novel to the fullest extent. I don't believe anything the government says, reports, instructs me to fear, or demands me to hate. I have felt this way for at least 2 decades, and my mistrust has proven to be entirely warranted, as our freedoms, liberties and rights have been trampled upon and discarded by our overlords. With the proliferation of social media platforms, which should have vastly expanded our free speech opportunities and free flow of information, we've seen a massive effort by the party/deep state to censor anything that deviates from the approved state narrative and career-ending punishment to those willing to contradict the lies, mistruths and disinformation. As Ron Paul stated many years ago, truth is treason in an empire of lies. And this empire of debt, destruction, delusion and decadence is sustained only by lies and false narratives at this pivotal point in history. The bloviating neocon authoritarian tyrants fall back on the same old tired narrative of the US being the beacon of light in a dark world, when it is the failing American empire spreading death, destruction and disarray around the globe, hanging their hat on the most powerful military in the world and having the dominant currency in the world is a losing proposition. Now I just want to make clear here that when we talk about America, we are not talking about the public. Okay, this is the senior politicians and the deep state. This is not the regular folk like you and I, okay? So please don't misunderstand me when I say American. That's who we're talking about, not the people. We spent over $2 trillion fighting the Taliban from 2001 until 2022 and were defeated by a bunch of third world goat herders. The most powerful military in the world, my ass. Every military conflict we initiate or sponsor becomes a cluster. The US initiated the Ukraine war in 2014 with the CIA overthrow of the legitimately elected government, and we have poured over $100 billion into this quagmire since provoking Putin to invade. We fund all sides in the Middle East debacle that threatens to expand into WW3. This doesn't even count the hundreds of billions wasted in the destruction of Iraq, Libya and Syria, but at least the military-industrial complex extracted enormous profits as the empire crumbled. The US dollar is no longer king. Its demise is being signalled by the all-time highs in gold and cryptocurrencies. Russia, China and the expanding coalition of BRICS countries are rapidly building a new economic paradigm that will further reduce the world's dependence on the US dollar. But these external foes are nothing compared to the death spiral initiated by our own corrupt politicians, central bankers and government bureaucrat drones. And here is the debt. $35.75 trillion. But look, in September, October 2024, look at the leap up. This is just a straight vertical leap up to $35 trillion. Your government added $500 billion to the national debt in 3 weeks and is now adding at a rate exceeding $2 trillion per year while paying $1.2 trillion a year in interest on the existing national debt of $35.8 trillion. For perspective, at the beginning of this century, the national debt was $5.7 trillion after 211 years as a country, and we were running small surpluses annually. Gold is always a good barometer of how well a country's finances have been managed. It stood at $275 per ounce on January the 1st, 2000, and is now up by a factor of 10 at $2,736 today. The financial situation of this country is dire, but everyone continues to pretend everything is normal. It's not normal, and the crash will mark the end of this empire and possibly the end of America as a country. I've been committing thought crime every day since I began my blog in 2009. I've been punished through demonetization, censorship, career-damaging suppression, and the disdain of the majority of sheep in this country, as nothing more than a crazy conspiracy theorist. It has been a lonely 15-year slog, but my will to resist the government and their false narratives has never wavered or waned. My faith in the fact that the existing social order is always swept away during fourth turnings keeps me fighting the good fight day after day. I feel the tide is beginning to turn as those in power desperately seek to retain their wealth, power and control. Their condemnations of truth-tellers is losing its luster. Less and less people are believing their BS. The regime-controlled media is now a laughingstock as they flail about and are caught in their manipulative actions by the thought crime brigade in the alt media. With the censorship during the CV scam-demic, you see, I even have to change my language so this won't get censored. They almost achieved Orwell's dystopian vision, but they have failed. I know things are going to get far worse over the next several years, but they will not win. Their Newspeak strategy to eliminate our thought crimes has failed. The truth will ultimately prevail. And another quote from Orwell, "Don't you see that the whole aim of Newspeak is to narrow the range of thought? In the end, we shall make thought crime literally impossible because there will be no words in which to express it." Think about that. There will be no words in which to express it. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And, it is interesting that the Joe Rogan-Trump interview was on a non-mainstream media platform, and this is where people are turning to for their information because, the Mockingbird media or the legacy media, you can just tell that they are repeating the same old story. They're not presenting the news, they're presenting an opinion. Okay, and but the more they do that, the more they cry wolf, the more they persecute people and then say that they're the ones who are being persecuted, the more the public gets the picture and the more that they will move away from trusting government, trusting institutions. And, really, from what I've seen, especially over the last intense activity over the last 4 years, it is definitely in your best interests and for the sake of your health that you do mistrust the government and the Ministry of Health. I mean, yes, I'm going to leave it there because don't get me going because it's been absolutely insane. Anyway, I hope this will strike a note with you and that you will view all things with a certain degree of suspicion, enough to make you go out and check it for yourself and to make your own informed decisions. And yes, I think we really have broken the back. It will be a few years as all of the garbage comes out, but I think that we have broken the back of this, and well, the next 2 or 3 years are going to be extremely interesting. So if you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe below. And in the meantime, this is Houndog Steve wishing you a very pleasant afternoon, and we'll talk very, very shortly. See you now. Bye.